Hey guys, it's me, Devin. Welcome to the interview section of this TUTV segment. I'm here with David A. Davis. How you doing today, David?
I'm great, thanks.
Awesome. So, before we get started, just tell us a little about who you are and what exactly you do.
Sure. I'm Associate Professor of English at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. And I'm here today because we're hosting a screening of Stanley Kubrick's film, Paths of Glory, this evening.
That's awesome. So it's this evening. That is really incredible. So tell me a little bit about Paths of Glory and the screening that's going to take place.
Sure. So the movie is filmed in 1957. So it's a Cold War era movie, but it's set in the context of World War I. And it's about this particular offensive by the French army that fails, and then what happens after the offensive fails. So it's not so much about one army fighting against another, it's about the members of one army fighting against each other and trying to determine what they're actually fighting for. So it brings us into some really complicated psychological issues about what motivates people, their ambitions, their faults, their foibles, their flaws. It's a really fascinating film to think about that against the context of war and matters of life and death.
Absolutely. So when people mostly think of like World War I context, they're gonna think of the violent parts. They're gonna picture Saving Private Ryan in their head. They're gonna picture that. So this one is a much more personal and mental impact.
Yes.
So did you have to read like the screenplay going into this? Like, what's the vastness of all that in it?
Yes. Well, I've done a great deal of research on World War I and modernism. I published a book on World War I and literature. I've taught courses on World War I and modernism, and so. The discussion came up about representing the memory of World War I and what film would tie into that. And so I automatically go to this particular film, even though it's made in the 1950s, because it represents the context of that moment and the inner strife in a really interesting way. It's based on a novel by a World War I veteran named Humphrey Cobb, who published the novel Paths of Glory in 1935. And it's based on a mutiny within the French military. That attack was ordered, the men in the trenches refused to leave the trenches, and the high command, they felt like they needed to set an example. And so this is the context of the film. But if you do like battle scenes, it does have some fantastic battle scenes, but the battle doesn't go very well for the French army.
Really? So there is their multi-elements. You're going to get the natural, it's taking place in a war, but it really wants you to focus on, would you say, character development?
Yes.
As such?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So that plays a major big role to it. What is your favorite aspect of this film personally, though?
So in this film, we get to think about what actually motivates people in the context of a war. What are they fighting for? Are they fighting for their country? Are they fighting for themselves? Are they fighting out of obligation? Are they fighting for duty? What are people willing to kill for? And what are they willing to die for?
That's really interesting. That sounds something I'd really want to see. You said the screening's tonight?
It's tonight, 6 p.m. in Lorton Hall.
6 p.m. in Lorton Hall. So tell me a little bit what's going to happen. Is it just going to show the film itself tonight?
Yes. So tonight the film will be screened, and then afterwards myself and Dr. Bob Jackson from the English department at TU are going to have a conversation about the film in which we pull out some of these issues, and we'll invite some audience participation for people to offer their own opinions and perspectives about the films. So it should be a really interesting conversation, and this is part of a larger series of events based on memory being hosted by the Oklahoma Center for Humanities.
That is really neat. So what, in your mind, what do you think is going to be the reaction to the audience with this film? Because it is a different type of war film. Right. So what do you think?
I think people are going to be surprised by how much they enjoy the film. Awesome. This is a very high quality film, and if you've never seen it before, it's one that you definitely should consider. It's on most top 100 film lists.
Really?
And not the most famous film on those lists. So definitely a good investment of a couple of hours on an otherwise cold, rainy evening.
Okay. So as we're finishing up here, tell me a little bit about what brings it to TU.
So the Oklahoma Center for Humanities is hosting a series of events on the issue of memory and how we construct social and collective memory, what issues we want to remember, what issues perhaps we don't want to remember so much. This one lets us to think a little bit about the memory of World War I. This year is the centennial of the end of World War I. And one of the most interesting points to me is in the United States, we haven't observed a significant amount of memorials to this particular war.
Absolutely.
So this gives us an opportunity to think a little bit about what that war means and how we could or should remember it.
And also from a different perspective, like from the French perspective as well, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's truly incredible. Well, hey, David, thank you so much for being on the show today, and I hope everyone can make it out there tonight. Awesome. So I'm Devin, and this is David. Definitely check out the screening of Paths of Glory tonight. Thanks, guys.